Today, I want to share the story of how my own son looked me straight in the eye and tore away every last shred of dignity I thought I still had. After my husband passed, when my heart was already split in pieces, he looked at me with contempt, as though I was nothing. His wife stood there beside him, smirking like she had already claimed everything Matthew and I had spent a lifetime building. That was the moment I realized grief wasn't the only storm coming my way. But none of them knew what was waiting once the lawyer began to read the will. Their arrogance would soon turn into fear. If stories like this, raw and real family battles, speak to you, I hope you'll like this video, subscribe and share your thoughts below. Welcome to Grandma Life Stories, where we open the doors to hidden struggles and the lessons they leave behind. The day of Matthew's funeral was suffocating. Not because of the Texas sun burning down on black suits and dark dresses, but because of the weight crushing my chest, a pain no words could capture. For nearly 40 years, Matthew and I built our lives piece by piece, deal after deal, until we were known as one of the most respected real estate families in Dallas. $42 million in assets, properties, and legacies. Not just money, but the sweat, tears, and sacrifices we carried together. And yet, standing there in the grand Dawson estate, with polished oak coffins and rows of white lilies lined neatly along the marble hall, I felt emptier than I'd ever felt in my life. Guests filled every corner of our home. Business partners, neighbors, distant relatives, murmuring softly, sipping wine, offering condolences that felt practiced. To them, Matthew was a giant, a man whose empire defined Dallas real estate. To me, he was my husband, my anchor, the steady hand that kept me from falling. My son Noah grieved differently. At 38, he had always been admired in public, tall, charming, with a voice that drew attention. People in business circles respected his confidence, though I knew it for what it was: recklessness dressed up as charm. He had Matthew's eyes but none of his patience. By his side stood Amy, his wife of 10 years. 35, elegant, sharp-tongued, with an ambition that gleamed like steel every time she smiled. During the service, she clung to Noah's arm not in sorrow, but in quiet triumph, as though her place at his side had finally crowned her queen of this empire. As I stood quietly accepting condolences, they greeted guests as though they were already the new hosts, shaking hands, smiling, whispering promises of what was to come. Subtle, yes, but I noticed. Others did too. A few lifted their brows as if to say, "Shouldn't this be Charlotte's moment?" But no one spoke. When the last cars finally pulled away that evening and the gates closed, I stayed in the dining hall surrounded by flowers that were already starting to wilt. Matthew's photo rested on the mantel, his familiar eyes watching me. I whispered a vow. "Matthew," I said, my voice shaking but steady in spirit, "I promise to protect what we built. I'll guard it with every breath I have left." I turned and caught sight of Noah across the room, leaning close to Amy. His lips barely moved, but I heard him clear as day. "It's all ours now." Amy's painted smile widened, her eyes glancing at me like a predator sizing up prey. The words pierced deeper than any knife. The days after the funeral were silent. The Dawson mansion, once filled with Matthew's laughter, now echoed only with my footsteps. At 59, I thought my later years would bring peace. Instead, I was drifting in grief and uncertainty. Noah came often, but not with warmth. His words were tender only on the surface, rehearsed like lines from a play. He'd offer to handle things, claiming he didn't want me to worry. Amy hovered close, her hand brushing over papers, her tone soaked in concern, while her eyes scanned me for cracks. "You should rest, Mom," Noah said one evening, placing a hand over mine. "Dad left everything to me anyway. You know he built all this for me. I'll take care of it. You don't need to worry." Amy's voice followed, soft but cutting. "Charlotte, you should focus on prayer and peace. Let Noah manage the empire. He was made for this. You weren't." Their words were meant to soothe, but all I felt was the sting of dismissal. To them, I was already too old, too fragile, too irrelevant to matter. But they didn't know me. They thought grief had hollowed me out, that it had erased the woman I was. But I was the one who had built this life beside Matthew. I was the one who negotiated contracts when his health faltered, who sacrificed friendships and years of my youth for this empire. As I watched Noah puff out his chest and Amy smirk like she'd already won, one thing became clear: this fight was only beginning. And the story of Matthew's will would not be about what he left behind. It would be about what came to light when greed was given its chance to bare its teeth. That night, the mansion felt colder than ever. The ticking of the grandfather clock seemed heavier, louder, like it carried the weight of betrayal. Walking the corridor, I searched for strength to face another day without Matthew. Passing the study, I saw a sliver of light beneath the oak door. I paused, then heard voices. Noah's voice. Amy's sharp reply. I should have walked away, but the cruel edge in their laughter rooted me to the floor. Amy whispered slyly, "She's fragile now. You've seen her. One gentle push and she'll fall exactly where you want. Hold her hand, smile like the dutiful son, and she'll sign whatever you put in front of her." Then Noah's laugh, hard, arrogant, nothing like the little boy I once knew. "You're right," he said. "She's easy prey. All her life she hid behind Dad's shadow. The moment I tell her it's too complicated, she'll nod and hand me the pen." My chest locked tight. Amy's voice again. "We'll draft something clean. She'll think it's routine. Once the lawyer confirms her signature, it's ours. She can have her pearls and her charity lunches, but the empire belongs to us." Noah added, his tone flat and cruel. "She'll thank me for saving her the trouble. Who listens to a grieving widow anyway?" I bit down on my lip until I tasted blood. My only son, plotting to strip me of everything Matthew and I had built. I leaned against the wall, memories of Noah's first steps, his laughter in the yard, his childhood innocence flooding me, only to be shattered by the voice of a man who now saw me as nothing more than an obstacle. I wanted to scream, to burst into that room, but something told me to wait. If they thought I was weak, I would let them think so. If they thought I was blind, I would keep my eyes sharper than ever. Still, Noah's words cut once more before I pulled away. "She'll never see it coming. Mom's weak. She'll fold like paper. And when she does, everything Matthew left will be mine." Amy's laugh rang like poison. My breath caught, my knees unsteady, but I forced myself to move silently back down the hall. By the time I reached my bedroom, tears blurred my sight. I collapsed against the door, crushed by betrayal. For a second, I prayed it was just grief speaking, that Noah's words were born of desperation. But deep down I knew better. That wasn't the voice of a son mourning his father. It was the voice of a man who had already crowned himself king. Standing in the dark of my room, fists clenched, I felt something new forming inside me. Not just sorrow, resolve. Matthew had trusted me to guard what we built, and I swore right then I would not crumble. If Noah thought I would fold into the shadows, he was wrong. Yes, he betrayed me. Yes, Amy turned his arrogance into a weapon. But they underestimated me, and I would make sure they regretted it. The next morning, the house itself seemed heavy with betrayal. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. My hands shook so badly when I tried pouring coffee that I gave up. I grabbed my keys and left. Driving through Dallas, the sky sharp and cloudless, I felt like a ghost moving through a city untouched by my grief. My heart pulled me to one place. The office of John Hale. John had been Matthew's closest friend for over 30 years, our family's lawyer. A man Matthew trusted completely. His office was in a tall stone building downtown, brass handles gleaming in the morning sun. When I stepped inside, the smell of leather and polished wood wrapped around me like an anchor. His secretary recognized me right away and led me in. John stood when he saw me. His hair was more silver now, but his presence was as solid as ever. He clasped my hands and said, "Charlotte, I was going to call you today. I didn't want to disturb you so soon after Matthew's passing." My throat tightened. "John," I whispered, "I need to know. Did Matthew leave something behind? Something that tells me what to do now?" John studied me, then motioned for me to sit. His office was lined with bookshelves stacked with journals and photos of his family. He lowered his voice. "Yes, Charlotte. Matthew left a sealed will. It can only be opened with the family present. But he also left me a letter. A private note for you, anticipating this very moment." The words struck like thunder. My breath caught. He knew. John nodded. "Matthew suspected Noah's greed might get the best of him. He trusted you would need guidance. He wanted to make sure you weren't blindsided." My chest tightened, sorrow and pride swirling together. Sorrow that Matthew doubted his own son. Pride that he believed in my strength. What did the letter say? I asked. John unlocked a drawer and handed me an envelope, its edges worn with time. This is yours. Keep it. But I can tell you what it says in essence. Matthew wanted Noah to learn responsibility the hard way. He didn't want to reward arrogance or entitlement. He wanted his legacy protected, not devoured. I pressed the envelope to my chest, as if holding Matthew's hand one last time. John's voice was steady. Charlotte, the will itself will make things clear. But Noah will fight it. And Amy, she'll push him to challenge every word. This could get ugly. I drew a long breath. Last night I was crushed by betrayal. But now, holding Matthew's words, I felt strength stirring. I won't let them destroy what he built, I said. If this is Matthew's last wish, I'll defend it with everything I have. Relief softened John's face. That's exactly what he hoped you'd say. You're stronger than they realize, Charlotte. That's your advantage. They think grief makes me blind, I said. But they don't know me. I may have let Matthew take the lead in public, but I listened. I learned. And I will not be fooled by my own child. John hesitated, then added, There's one more thing. Matthew left something symbolic in the will. I can't reveal details, but it's designed to test Noah's character. It won't be what he expects. You'll need to be ready for his reaction. My grip on the envelope tightened. Then let him react. I won't yield. If Matthew trusted me with this burden, I'll carry it through. John smiled faintly. Good. Because once that will is opened, there's no turning back. The truth will cut deep. But remember, Matthew didn't just want to punish. He wanted Noah to learn humility, even if it comes too late. For the first time since the funeral, I sat taller, anchored by purpose instead of crushed by grief. I slipped the envelope carefully into my purse. Thank you, John, I said softly. You've given me more than legal advice, I told John. You've given me direction. Whatever storm comes, I'll face it. He rose with me, placing a steady hand on my shoulder. You're not alone, Charlotte. Remember that. As I stepped out of his office, the roar of Dallas traffic rushed around me, but inside, there was only calm determination. Just last night, Noah's cruelty had broken me. Today, Matthew's foresight had sewn me back together. I walked toward my car with one clear thought burning. If my son wanted a war over this estate, then a war he would have. And this time I was ready. I knew I couldn't confront Noah too soon. He'd fight back hard, and Amy would only sharpen his arrogance further. They believed I was fragile, tired, easy to fool. So, I decided to let them believe it. I began to play the part. The next morning over breakfast, I let my shoulders sag just enough. My hands trembled slightly as I lifted my teacup. Noah sat across from me, scrolling through his phone, while Amy tapped her nails against the table, impatient as though even family meals were beneath her. Noah, I said softly, almost wavering, maybe it's time you helped me with some of your father's paperwork. I'm not as strong as I used to be. Just a few small things, nothing heavy. Temporary, of course. He looked up quickly, suspicion flashing in his eyes before he masked it with that practiced calm. Temporary? What do you mean? Just a few minor accounts, I said, sliding a small folder across the table. A maintenance bill for the lake cabin. A shareholder note that needs watching. Simple things. I'm so tired lately. It would be a relief. Amy's smirk appeared instantly. That's a wise choice, Charlotte, she purred. You shouldn't burden yourself. Noah can handle it. He's good with numbers. I lowered my eyes, smiling faintly, letting them see only weakness. Inside, though, I watched every flicker of greed cross Noah's face. He took the folder like it was the first crack in a sealed vault. Of course, Mom, he said smoothly, forcing calm into his voice. I'll take care of it. You just focus on your health. Health. The way he said it was like a dagger. That afternoon, after they left on errands, I drove quietly downtown, not to the Grand Dawson study, but to the headquarters that bore Matthew's name. The staff, loyal and seasoned, rose when I entered. Mrs. Dawson, the finance director said warmly, I'm so sorry for your loss. I placed a hand over hers. Thank you. I need a favor. From now on, whenever Noah requests files or financial records, I want a duplicate copy sent directly to me. Quietly. No questions, no delays. Her brows lifted, but then she nodded firmly. Understood. One by one I gave the same instructions to department heads, accounts, real estate, operations. Calm, clear, deliberate. Noah would think he was pulling strings, but every move would echo back to me. I would have eyes where he least expected. By evening I was back in the mansion garden, sipping tea like I had never left. Noah and Amy's laughter carried in from the driveway. He looked relaxed, confident, as though the keys of Matthew's empire were slipping neatly into his hands. "Mom," he said lightly, sitting across from me. "I went through those papers. Easy stuff. You don't need to worry anymore." "Thank you, son," I whispered, my voice heavy with feigned weariness. Amy folded her arms, her eyes glinting with triumph. "See? Things are smoother already. You just needed to let go." I didn't answer. Sometimes silence is louder than words. The following week settled into a rhythm. I let Noah sit at my desk, sign maintenance checks, shuffle papers. I let Amy hover like a self-proclaimed queen over a conquered land. And every night, once they were gone, I cross-checked the figures, built files, and documented everything. Brick by brick, I was preparing. Then came the first true test. One afternoon, I overheard Amy on the phone in the hallway, her voice sharp as a knife. "Yes, the Austin villa," she said. "Prime property. I can get a buyer before summer. Don't worry, Charlotte won't resist. She barely knows what she signs anymore." My chest burned, but I kept walking as though I hadn't heard. The Austin villa was sacred to Matthew. His fishing spot, his bourbon at dusk, the place he taught our granddaughter to cast a line. To sell it would erase him. That evening at dinner, Noah cleared his throat. "Mom, Amy and I think we should sell the Austin property. It's too much for you to handle." Amy leaned in, eyes gleaming. "It's for the best. That place just sits empty. We could reinvest the money somewhere more useful." I let my fork rest on the plate, forced my face into calm resignation. "If you think it's wise, then perhaps draw up the details. I trust you." For a moment, Noah's grin flickered before he hit it. "I'll look into it. Don't you worry." But inside, I vowed to Matthew they would never touch it. Later that night, in the quiet of my room, I wrote in my private ledger, "Austin Villa, block sale at all costs." Then I slid the book into the drawer and locked it. Looking at Matthew's photo on the nightstand, I whispered, "They think I'm weak. But they're the ones in danger." The Dawson estate was more than timber and stone. It was Matthew's blood, poured into every wall, every oak he planted. And yet, one sharp afternoon, Noah stormed into the study, waving a draft contract like it was his birthright. "Mom," he snapped, "we need to talk about Dawson. The estate." I asked quietly. "Yes," he barked. "It's time to sell. We're sitting on untapped equity. Austin Villa fine, but Dawson is the crown jewel. Developers would line up. Dad built it for me. He would want me to expand." The way he said for me stung like acid. "Your father built it for this family," I said evenly. "For all of us. He planted every oak in that garden himself. Do you really believe he meant for you to sell it off like a poker chip?" Noah's face darkened. "Mom, you don't understand business. Nostalgia doesn't pay returns. I'm not a child waiting for your approval anymore. Dawson belongs to me. Dad built it for me." Amy leaned against the doorway, arms folded, her smile sharp and deliberate. "You're holding him back, Charlotte. Every empire either grows or dies. You clinging to the past won't change the future. Admit it, you're just afraid." Her words cut deeper than Noah's shouting. Rage boiled inside me, but I swallowed it down. Losing my temper would ruin everything. Instead, I laid my pen down and met Noah's stare. "You think selling Dawson is growth?" I asked. "It's destruction. And if you do this, you'll lose more than money. You'll lose the very legacy your father wanted to protect." He slammed the contract on the desk. "Legacy doesn't pay dividends. I'm moving forward with or without you." I tightened my grip on Matthew's old fountain pen, forcing myself calm. Noah wasn't just reckless. He was blinded by entitlement. And blind men led by greed only ever walked into cliffs. It didn't take long for him to find someone willing to feed that hunger. A week later, word reached me that Noah had been seen at the Sterling Club, Dallas's den for high rollers and deal makers. I didn't need to guess why he was there. Through the tall glass doors I saw him across from Leo Carmichael. Mid-40s, slick hair, razor-cut suit, eyes like a predator. A broker, a deal-maker, the kind of man who smiled while stealing your shoes. Noah leaned forward, voice loud enough to carry. 25 million. A flagship restaurant in Uptown. Dawson branded. Exclusive dining, corporate events, private suites. It'll be the talk of Dallas. Leo swirled his drink, amused. And the capital? I can liquidate assets, Noah said quickly. The Dawson estate's part of the portfolio. With your backing, banks open their doors. Double returns in under 2 years. Leo's grin spread slowly. Double? Risky. But the Dawson name still carries weight. He tapped his glass. All right. I'll bring investors, smooth the banks, guarantee credibility. I want 10% off the top. Done, Noah agreed instantly. Too instantly. From where I hid, my hands clenched the railing. Matthew's name, his life's work. Being tossed around like cheap currency. Leo leaned in closer. But listen, kid. This only works if you're bold. No hesitation. You want the big leagues, you burn the past. No more mother. No sentimental anchors. Clear. Noah puffed his chest, answering without hesitation. Clear. Moments later, Amy appeared, draping her hand across his arm, flashing that same victorious smirk. She whispered something that made Leo laugh. The three of them toasted as though a kingdom had been secured. I stepped back into the shadow of a column, my pulse hammering. In that moment it was no longer about Noah stumbling. He was sprinting, headlong into a pit, selling Dawson, gutting the company, handing Matthews. Honor to men like Leo, who saw legacy only as leverage. Driving home I replayed their words, their gestures, every smug smile. By the time I reached the estate gates, I knew this was no longer a family dispute. It was war. Noah wasn't just risking money. He was risking our name, our foundation, everything Matthew had sworn to protect. Inside the house, he passed me in the hall, his face lit with reckless energy. Big things are coming, Mom, he said. Bigger than you ever imagined. You'll thank me one day. I stopped him with a look. Noah, remember this. Every empire built too fast collapses twice as hard. He laughed, shaking his head. That's your problem. You don't think big enough. Leo gets it. Amy gets it. You don't. And then he walked away. Alone in the silence, I pressed my hand against Matthew's portrait on the wall. They think I'm powerless, I whispered. But they have no idea who they're playing with. I thought Noah's arrogance had already reached its peak. I was wrong. The following week he started carrying a folder into every meeting. Thick binder with Dawson embossed on the cover. At first I assumed it was nothing more than his notes, but then whispers reached me. He wasn't just saying heir apparent. He was showing people something, a document. At a dinner with 2 board advisors I saw it myself. He spread out a clean cream colored sheet, the kind of paper our lawyers use for drafts. Across the top in bold it read, Last Will and Testament of Matthew Dawson. My stomach clenched. He spoke with a steady, rehearsed confidence. Of course, nothing is official until the reading next week, but this was my father's intent. His signature is right there. He wanted me to carry Dawson Enterprises into its next phase. Oh, it to him to act swiftly to capture opportunities before they pass. The advisors nodded as if reassured. None of them noticed or cared that the page lacked a seal, a notary stamp, any sign of legal completion. To their eyes it looked legitimate. To them it was enough. Later that night I confronted him in the hallway. Noah, what did I just see? I demanded. He didn't flinch. A draft, Mom. A draft that reflects Dad's wishes. You can fight me all you want, but this company needs a leader. Willing to act. Investors don't wait for ceremonies. They want proof of continuity. It's not proof, I shot back. It's a forgery. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. As persuasion. Don't confuse the two. The more dangerous part wasn't the paper itself. It was how he wielded it. At one meeting with bankers, I overheard him presenting his pitch. He no longer spoke like a desperate heir. He spoke like a CEO mid-transition with jargon that sounded both professional and inevitable. We're restructuring and diversifying the Dawson portfolio post-transition. He said, calm as ice. Our family enterprise is entering a new generational phase. That means capital reallocation, fresh partnerships, and strategic investments. We're not just inheriting, we're innovating. I watched the bankers lean in. When Noah framed it as Dawson Enterprises, it sounded invincible. Not Noah Dawson begging for cash, but a dynasty securing its future. Amy chimed in smoothly, her tone dripping with confidence. What you're seeing here is generational succession. At its finest, the market trusts stability, and Dawson Enterprises represents exactly that. They had built a performance, one that made Noah appear unstoppable. The deals themselves were cunningly shaped, not outright commitments, but instruments designed to trap. I managed to glance over one of the agreements Noah brought home. It wasn't a finalized contract. It was a letter of intent, an LOI. At first glance it seemed harmless, just an expression of interest. But buried in the clauses was the poison. The text read, Party B agrees to reserve exclusive rights to participate in the Dawson investment project for 30 days. In exchange, Party A will deposit an earnest sum of X dollars within 10 business days following the probate hearing. Should Party A fail to deliver, a breakup fee equal to 15% of the project value shall be due immediately. 15% of $25 million, nearly $4 million. Money that would never come back. He was gambling with liabilities he didn't even own yet. Worse, every document bore his father's name as a shield, turning Matthew's reputation into collateral. One evening, I entered the study to find Noah at the desk drafting emails. Amy was at his shoulder scrolling through numbers on a tablet. Noah needs reassurance, she said. He wants to know. The money will clear after probate. Noah replied without hesitation. Tell him the funds are as good as delivered. This is Dawson Enterprises. We don't default. Cut in from the doorway. You mean you don't default yet? They both looked up. You're walking a thin line, I said, making promises with assets you don't control. Waving a draft will in people's faces like it's gospel. Do you know what happens if one of them sues? Noah's jaw tightened. Mom, don't undermine me in front of Amy. You keep living in fear. But I'm building. Dad wouldn't want hesitation. He'd want boldness. Amy added almost sweetly. He's right, Charlotte. The world rewards decisiveness. You clinging to procedure only makes him look stronger by comparison. I stared at both of them, their arrogance feeding each other, and felt the weight of Matthew's portrait looming over the room. Within days, rumors began spreading in the market. Dawson was restructuring, shifting into hospitality, leveraging assets for growth. Some believed it, others doubted, but all were talking. And behind those rumors I knew were Noah's staged documents and empty assurances. At a luncheon in Fort Worth, he stood at the head of a long oak table, investors lining both sides. He held up the same draft will like it was a banner. My father's final wish was continuity, he declared. He built this empire for me to take forward. We're not waiting for bureaucracy. We're moving now. You want, and you have 30 days of exclusivity to secure your place. After that, the door closes. The room murmured with excitement. One man asked, and what if the funds delay? Noah smiled, rehearsed, flawless. Dawson doesn't delay. We honor commitments. That was the moment I realized he wasn't bluffing anymore. He believed his own lies. That night, I shut the door to Matthew's study and sat in the silence. The scent of his old cologne still lingered faintly on the shelves. His books, his papers, the weight of his presence, everything pressed against me. I reached for the box of letters he left behind. My hand shook as I untied the string. Inside were envelopes, his handwriting firm and unyielding. I pulled one free and unfolded it under the dim lamp. His words cut through me like steel. If Noah falls into greed, let him taste the consequences. Only then will he learn. Whispered to the empty room. Matthew, I'll see this through. My voice cracked, but my resolve tightened. Read the letter twice, then 3 times. Each line was Matthew's foresight, his understanding of our son's weakness. He had known. He had predicted this very spiral. He hadn't left me unprepared. He had armed me. I laid the letter aside and opened another folder stacked nearby. These weren't personal. They were company documents, financial records, contracts with signatures that weren't quite right, numbers that didn't align, expenses disguised as consulting fees. My chest tightened as I turned page after page. It was all there. Decisions Noah had made before Matthew's death. Deals already bleeding the company. Vendors paid twice, shell. Companies receiving transfers, and in the margins Noah's initials bold like a child proud of his mischief. I slammed the file shut, anger rising in my throat. He wasn't just reckless now. He had been reckless all along. The clock struck midnight and I sat back, exhausted but unable to rest. The next morning I called John. When he arrived, he looked at the stack of documents spread across Matthew's desk. His eyes narrowed. "Where did you find these?" "They were buried under Matthew's old files," I said. "Hidden but not gone. Look here." I pointed to a series of payments. Same vendor, 3 invoices. Same amount, same date. "That's not a mistake." John leaned closer, scanning. "And here, see this? That signature isn't the CFO's. It's traced." Sloppy. My heart pounded. So he was draining us even before Matthew passed. John let out a low whistle. "Charlotte, this isn't just incompetence. This is deliberate." Pressed my palms to the desk, steadying myself. "We need proof that holds in a boardroom, not just whispers. Noah. Waves that fake we need something heavier." John nodded. "We'll track every irregular payment, build a timeline. Once it's all mapped, nobody can deny it." That afternoon we drove to the downtown office quietly. John had pulled access logs, emails, and transaction records. We sat together in the conference room, piecing things together like detectives. I scrolled through Noah's correspondence. His tone was cocky, casual. "Push this through. Don't bother Mom with details. Dad always said speed matters." I clenched my fists. He was using Matthew's words as cover, twisting them into excuses for theft. John dropped another folder in front of me. "Look, he signed an LOI with Brahman weeks before Matthew's death. That means he was already positioning himself. He didn't wait for probate. He didn't even wait for his father's body to be cold." The reality cut deep. My son had been planning this long before grief could even set in. As the sun set, John leaned back. "Charlotte, you have enough to corner him. But the question is, when?" I looked at the pile of letters beside me. Matthew's voice echoing in my mind. "Let him taste the consequences." "Not yet," I said. "If I strike now, he'll spin it as me resisting change. No, we wait until he hangs himself with his own rope. Then we tighten the knot." John's eyes met mine. "That takes patience." "Patience," I said coldly, "is all I have left." That night, back in Matthew's study, I sat again with the letters. My hands no longer trembled. My fear had hardened into something else. Clarity whispered into the silence. "Matthew, I'll carry this to the end. Not because I want revenge, but because he must learn. He must build again. Not on stolen ground, but on his own." I closed the box, locked it, and turned off the lamp. The silence was heavy, but this time it was no longer suffocating. It was the silence before a storm, and I was ready to bring it. The day of the will reading arrived, and the Dawson estate felt colder than I had ever known. The long library, with its towering shelves and heavy curtains drawn against the sun, was transformed into a courtroom of sorts. The air was thick with unease. I sat at the center of the long mahogany table, posture straight, face calm. Inside, my heart was steady but guarded. To my right was John Hale, our family lawyer. His expression unreadable, papers neatly stacked before him. Across from me sat Noah and Amy, side by side, Noah's shoulders squared with false confidence, his chin raised. Amy leaned close, whispering to him with a smile that barely hid her smugness. To them, this was a formality, a ceremonial rubber stamp before the floodgates opened in their favor. I watched their arrogance like one watches a storm gather over. Calm water. John cleared his throat. The room hushed instantly. His deep voice carried authority, every syllable deliberate. By order of the late Matthew. She whispered something into Leo's ear that made him laugh, and the three of them clinked glasses as if they had just secured a kingdom. My pulse hammered as I pressed back into the shadow of a column. In that moment it became clear, this wasn't about Noah stumbling anymore. He was sprinting headlong into a pit, selling Dawson, gutting the company, and handing Matthew's honor over to men like Leo, men who saw legacy only as leverage. Driving home I replayed every word, every smug gesture, every crooked smile. By the time I reached the estate gates, I knew this was no longer a family dispute. This was war. Noah wasn't just risking money, he was putting our name, our foundation, everything Matthew had sworn to protect on the line. Inside the house, he passed me in the hall, his face bright with reckless energy. "Big things are coming, Mom," he said. "Bigger than you ever imagined. You'll thank me one day." I stopped him with a hard look. "Noah, remember this. Every empire built too fast collapses twice as hard." He just laughed, shaking his head. "That's your problem. You don't think big enough. Leo gets it. Amy gets it. You don't." Then he walked away, leaving silence in his wake. Alone, I pressed my hand against Matthew's portrait. "They think I'm powerless," I whispered. "But they have no idea who they're playing with." I thought Noah's arrogance had peaked, but I was wrong. The following week, he began carrying a thick binder to every meeting, Dawson embossed across the front. First I assumed it was just his notes. Then whispers started reaching me. He wasn't simply talking like an heir. He was showing people something. At a dinner with two board advisors I saw it myself. Noah laid out a cream-colored sheet of paper, the kind of draft our lawyers used. Across the top in bold it read, "Last will and testament of Matthew Dawson." My stomach clenched. He spoke with a smooth, rehearsed confidence. Of course, nothing is official until the reading next week, but this was my father's intent. His signature is right there. He wanted me to carry Dawson Enterprises forward. I owe it to him to act quickly before opportunities slip away. The advisors nodded, reassured. None of them noticed or cared that the page had no seal, no notary stamp, nothing that made it real. To their eyes it looked official. To them it was enough. That night, I confronted him in the hall. "Noah, what did I just see?" He didn't flinch. "A draft, Mom. A draft that reflects Dad's wishes. Investors don't wait for ceremonies. They want proof of continuity." "It's not proof," I shot back. "It's a forgery." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "It's persuasion. Don't confuse the two." And that was the dangerous part. Not the paper itself, but the way he wielded it. At one meeting with bankers, I overheard him pitch like a man born for the stage. He no longer sounded like a desperate heir. He spoke like a CEO mid-transition, his tone calm, his words rehearsed. "We're restructuring and diversifying the Dawson portfolio post-transition," he said, smooth as glass. "Our family enterprise is entering a generational phase. That means capital reallocation, new partnerships, and strategic investments. We're not just inheriting. We're innovating." The bankers leaned in, hooked. It wasn't Noah Dawson begging for a seat. It was Dawson Enterprises commanding the room. Amy leaned in with perfect timing, her tone dripping with confidence. "What you're witnessing here is generational succession at its finest. The market trusts stability, and Dawson Enterprises is exactly that." Together, they had built a performance that made Noah appear unstoppable. The deals weren't full commitments but traps, cleverly shaped instruments to corner us. One night, I managed to glance at an agreement Noah brought home. It wasn't a contract. It was a letter of intent, an LOI. On the surface, harmless. But buried inside was poison. Party B agrees to reserve exclusive rights to participate in the Dawson investment project for 30 days. In exchange, Party A will deposit an earnest sum within 10 business days following the probate hearing. Should Party A fail, a breakup fee equal to 15% of the project value will be due immediately. 15% of $25 million. Nearly $4 million gone before the ink dried. And every document bore Matthew's name. His reputation, his blood, as collateral. One evening I found Noah in the study, drafting emails while Amy hovered with her tablet. "Noah needs reassurance," she said. "He wants to know the money will clear after probate. Tell him the funds are as good as delivered," Noah replied, his voice sure. "This is Dawson Enterprises. We don't default." I cut in from the doorway. "You mean you don't default yet?" They both looked up. "You're walking a thin line," I said. "Making promises with assets you don't control. Waiving a draft will like it's gospel. Do you know what happens if one of them sues?" Noah's jaw tightened. "Mom, don't undermine me in front of Amy. You live in fear, but I'm building. Dad would want boldness." Amy smiled sweetly, twisting the knife. "He's right, Charlotte. The world rewards decisiveness. You clinging to procedure only makes him look stronger." Their arrogance fed each other like a fire. And soon the market started buzzing. Rumors spread. Dawson was restructuring, shifting into hospitality, leveraging assets for growth. Some believed, some doubted, but everyone was talking. At a luncheon in Fort Worth, Noah stood at the head of a long oak table. He held up that same draft will like a banner. "My father's final wish was continuity," he declared. "He built this empire for me to carry forward. We're not waiting for bureaucracy, we're moving now. You want in? You have 30 days of exclusivity. After that, the door closes." The room hummed with excitement. Someone asked, "And what if the funds delay?" Noah smiled, confident. "Flawless. Dawson doesn't delay. We honor commitments." That was when I realized he wasn't bluffing anymore. He believed his own lies. That night, I shut myself in Matthew's study. His scent still lingered faintly on the shelves. His books, his papers, they pressed against me. I pulled out the box of letters he'd left and untied the string with shaking hands. Inside, his handwriting stared back at me. I opened one. His words cut through me like steel. "If Noah falls into greed, let him taste the consequences. Only then will he learn." I pressed the paper to my chest. "Matthew, I'll see this through," I whispered. I opened another folder from the stacks nearby, company documents. And what I found made my stomach twist. Contracts with forged signatures. Duplicate invoices. Expenses disguised as consulting fees. Each page carried Noah's initials, bold, like a boy proud of his mischief. He hadn't just become reckless. He had been reckless all along. The next morning I called John. When he arrived and saw the documents spread across the desk, his face hardened. "Where did you find these?" "Buried in Matthew's files," I said. "Hidden but not gone. Look here, same vendor, 3 invoices, same date. That's not a mistake." John leaned in, scanning. "And this signature sloppy. Traced. This isn't incompetence, Charlotte. This is deliberate." My chest tightened. "Then we'll need proof that holds in a boardroom. If Noah waives that fake will, we need something heavier." He nodded. "We'll track every irregular payment. Build a timeline. Nobody will be able to deny it." That afternoon, we sat in the downtown office like detectives, piecing together emails and transactions. Noah's tone in his correspondence was cocky. "Push this through. Don't bother Mom with details. Dad always said speed matters." I clenched my fists. He was twisting Matthew's words into shields for his theft. John dropped another file. "Look, he signed an LOI with Brahman weeks before Matthew's death. He was already positioning himself. He didn't even wait for his father's body to be cold." The reality cut deep. My son hadn't just fallen. He had planned this long before grief ever had a chance to set in. As the sun set, John said quietly, "Charlotte, you have enough to corner him. The question is, when?" I thought of Matthew's words. "Let him taste the consequences." "Not yet," I said. "If I strike now, he'll spin it as me resisting change. No. We wait until he hangs himself with his own rope. Then we tighten the knot." John studied me, then nodded. "That takes patience." "Patience," I answered coldly, "is all I have left." That night, sitting again in Matthew's study, my hands no longer trembled. My fear had hardened into clarity. "Matthew," I whispered into the silence, "I'll carry this to the end. Not for revenge, but because Noah must learn. He must rebuild, not on stolen ground, but on his own." I locked the letters away and turned off the lamp. The silence pressed heavy, but it no longer suffocated me. It was the silence before a storm, and I was ready to bring it. The day of the will reading finally came. The Dawson estate felt colder than I had ever known. The long library, its shelves towering and curtains drawn against the sun, had been transformed into a courtroom. The air itself was heavy with unease. I sat at the center of the mahogany table, posture straight, face calm, my heart steady but guarded. To my right was John Hale, our family lawyer, his expression unreadable as he arranged his papers. Across from me sat Noah and Amy. Noah's shoulders squared with false confidence, chin raised high. Amy leaned close, whispering with a smug smile. To them this was just ceremony, a rubber stamp for their victory. The stamp hadn't even faded before the floodgates opened in their favor. I watched their arrogance the way you watch a storm build over still water. John cleared his throat, and the entire room fell silent. His voice carried weight, every word deliberate. By order of the late Matthew Dawson, I am tasked with reading his final will and testament. This document has been verified, sealed, and will be entered into probate effective today. Noah rolled his eyes, muttering just loud enough for me to hear. Yes, yes, let's move it along. Amy smirked at his impatience, but John didn't so much as blink. He read through the standard provisions first: donations to loyal employees, charitable gifts, instructions for maintaining certain properties. Noah tapped impatient fingers on the table while Amy gave a theatrical sigh. Finally, John adjusted his glasses and moved to the final section. The air in the room shifted. Even Noah straightened, ready for the coronation he thought was coming. John's tone sharpened. Now regarding Dawson Enterprises and the totality of the Dawson estate, including all assets, properties, and holdings. Noah leaned back, wearing a smug grin. Amy clasped his arm. Matthew Dawson hereby appoints his wife, Charlotte Dawson, as sole heir and primary executor of his estate. She shall assume the role of chairwoman of the Dawson Enterprises board, with full authority to act in his stead. The silence hit like a gunshot. Noah's smirk vanished. Amy's mouth fell open. John's voice carried on, steady and unflinching. Furthermore, it is Matthew Dawson's express wish that his son, Noah Dawson, inherit a trust in the amount of $100,000. This fund is subject to conditions: gainful employment, proof of personal responsibility, and abstaining from any misuse of the Dawson name. The fund shall be administered at Charlotte Dawson's discretion. The air froze. My hands were still, but inside I felt the weight of Matthew's foresight pressing down. Noah shot to his feet, chair screeching against the floor. His face flushed crimson. "This is fraud," he shouted, voice cracking. "I kept this family alive when Dad was gone. You expect me to believe he'd cut me down to a measly $100,000? This is my company. My inheritance." Amy's eyes brimmed with tears, but they were fueled by rage, not grief. This is absurd. Matthew loved Noah. He would never do this. He trusted him more than anyone. John didn't waver. His words cut like a blade. Matthew knew exactly what he was doing. He arranged this long before his illness worsened. This was his test, to see if Noah would wait responsibly, or let greed consume him. Sadly, Noah, you've already answered that. Noah's fists trembled. This is your doing, Mother. You poisoned him against me. I met his fury with silence first, letting the weight of his accusations hang. Then I answered, my voice sharp but steady. I didn't poison anything. Your own actions spoke louder than I ever could. The fake documents, the reckless deals, the arrogance. Your father saw through it all. Amy slammed her hand on the table. You think you've won? This isn't over. Noah will contest this. He'll drag you through court until every cent is gone. John cut her off, his voice like a gavel. He can try. But this will is airtight. Notarized, witnessed, sealed under court protection. Contesting it will drag every questionable move Noah made into the light. Is that the kind of scrutiny you want? Amy's face drained of color. Noah looked away, his chest heaving, his bravado cracking into something raw. Fear. I let the silence stretch, then spoke with the steel Matthew left me. Your father wanted you to stand on your own, Noah. Not to twist his legacy into your playground. He left you something, but he left you a lesson first. If you can't learn it, the money means nothing, and neither will the Dawson name. Noah collapsed into his chair, his head in his hands. Amy whispered frantically, but he didn't respond. His shoulders shook, not with grief but with rage he couldn't release. John closed the will and slid it back into its envelope. The reading is concluded. Charlotte, as executor, further proceedings are under your authority. I nodded once. Thank you, John. I rose slowly, steady. Noah and Amy stayed frozen. As I walked to the door, Matthew's presence felt stronger than ever. This wasn't just victory. It was justice. Behind me, silence lingered, thick, suffocating, undeniable. But it didn't last. Noah's fury exploded, shattering the air. This is fake. He roared, slamming his hand so hard the papers trembled. You twisted everything. You think you can steal what belongs to me? Amy clutched his arm. Calm down, Noah. Please. But he shoved her off, glaring at me. All those nights you sat by his side. You poisoned him against me. You turned him into your puppet. John folded his hands, calm as stone, making Noah's tantrum look smaller with every breath. I kept my voice even. Are you finished? Noah sneered. Not even close. He yanked a thick stack of papers from his briefcase, bound with a red clip. His hand shook, not from weakness but eagerness. This, he declared, raising it high, is the real will. The draft father wrote before you got to him. This is what he truly wanted. Amy's eyes lit with desperate hope. Yes, Noah, show them. Show them the truth. I didn't move. I tilted my head, my voice calm but cutting. Then by all means, Noah. Present it. At my signal, the doors opened. Members of the Dawson board and key investors filed in, their faces tight. Noah stiffened as he realized the audience had multiplied. Ladies and gentlemen, I said smoothly, Noah insists he holds proof of Matthew's true intentions. I thought you should hear it directly. Pride drowned his caution. Noah thrust the stack forward. This shows father never intended to give it all to her. He meant for me to run Dawson. He knew I was the only one capable. Gasps swept the room. Investors leaned forward, whispering. I kept my gaze locked on him. Tell me, Noah, is this the same document you showed some of these gentlemen to secure their letters of intent? A man in a gray suit stiffened. Yes, that's the one. A woman added. He claimed it was binding, that he was the next CEO. He pushed us to sign quickly under his assurances. Noah's smile faltered. That's right, because it's true. Father wanted me in charge. This is proof. I turned to John. John? He rose smoothly, a folder already ready. As counsel, let me clarify. The paper Noah holds is an outdated draft, discarded months before Matthew signed his final will. It holds no legal standing. He paused, letting the silence burn. But Noah used that worthless draft to solicit agreements, letters of intent, each with termination penalties. Total exposure. Nearly $4 million. The room erupted. Investors shouted. He tricked us. $4 million. Amy's face drained as she looked at Noah with dawning horror. Noah shook his head wildly. No, that's not right. I was protecting the company. John's voice cut through him. With forged authority. And worse, we have proof you signed loan applications using your mother's name as guarantor. That is fraud, Noah. Criminal fraud. The gasps this time were deadly. Eyes turned to me, then back to Noah. I stood slowly, my voice low and final. Noah, your father's will didn't strip you of power. You did that yourself. You didn't inherit a company, you manufactured debt. You didn't protect his legacy. You endangered it. And now you stand exposed, not as a leader but as a liability. Amy pulled away from him, her tears falling now for herself. The board's outrage surged. John raised his hand. Calm. Mrs. Dawson will assume chairmanship as stipulated. But Noah Dawson's actions will be addressed. The room roared with anger, not at me but at him. Noah shrank under it, his arrogance gone, his shoulders caving under humiliation. You wanted to prove yourself, Noah, I said, leaning forward, my voice steel. And you did. You proved to everyone here that greed and deception are your true inheritance, not Dawson Enterprises. The silence that followed was crushing. The trap had closed and Noah knew it. When I finally stood to leave, I didn't look back. The scraping of chairs, the investors demanding answers, Amy's sharp accusations. Those sounds told the story well enough. Noah had wanted power. Instead, he inherited disgrace. And for the first time since Matthew's death, I felt the weight begin to lift. When the last guest finally left and the doors closed heavy behind them, the room was still. Just me and my son. Noah stood rigid, chest heaving, eyes burning with humiliation. I didn't gloat. Victory tasted bitter when it came at a son's ruin. I pulled a sealed envelope from my bag. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable. Matthew's steady script. "Noah," I said evenly, holding it out. "This is from your father. He wrote it for this moment." His jaw tightened, suspicion flickered, but his hand still reached for it. He tore it open, eyes scanning the lines. His expression cracked. His lips trembled. His shoulders collapsed. For the first time that day, he didn't look like a man clawing for power. He looked like a boy who'd lost his way. He knew, he whispered, tears spilling. The words on that page were Matthew's, strong as ever. "My son, power gained without work is a curse. I built not just a company but a legacy brick by brick. Building is harder but it gives life meaning. Choose creation, not destruction." The letter slipped from his hands. His sobs shook the room. I didn't move closer. I didn't comfort him. My voice was firm though my heart ached. "Your father didn't want you to fail. He wanted you to learn. Respect isn't inherited, Noah. It's earned. You thought you could demand it. That's why you lost before you even began." He choked out. "I just wanted what was mine." "It was never yours to take," I replied. "It was yours to earn if you'd had the patience. But greed has a cost." For a long moment, the only sound was his broken breathing and the ticking clock. The next morning, a knock echoed at the front gates. I sat in the sitting room when the sound carried through the house. My heart sank before I even saw the uniforms. The police. 2 officers stepped inside, their faces grim. Behind them stood John Hale, silent, a folder tucked under his arm. "Noah Dawson," the taller officer announced, his voice flat. "You are under investigation for forgery and fraud." Noah stumbled back, shock washing over his face. "What? No, this isn't happening. You can't." But then they brought Leo through the doorway in handcuffs. His head hung low, his voice broken. "I told them everything, Noah. About the fake documents, about using your mother's name on the loans. I couldn't take the fall alone." The color drained from Noah's face. "You betrayed me." Leo didn't even look at him. He just whispered, "You betrayed yourself." The officers read Noah his rights. He shouted, cursed, tried to fight, but it didn't matter. The evidence was there, clear as ink on paper. I sat on the edge of the sofa, my hands gripping the fabric until my knuckles went white. My son, my own flesh and blood, was being taken away in disgrace. Tears burned at my eyes, but I forced them back. This wasn't pity. This was justice. As they pulled him toward the door, Noah turned, desperation flaring. "Mother, please. Say something. You can stop this." I rose, my voice steady and cold. "Noah, I warned you. Your father warned you. We both wanted you to stand on your own, not drag us all down. I will not shield you from the consequences you brought on yourself." For one heartbeat, I saw the frightened boy who once ran to me for comfort. But the moment passed, and the officers dragged him through the doorway. Silence swallowed the house. My body felt heavy, my chest tight. Tears finally spilled, quiet, uncontrollable. Not tears of triumph, but of a mother who had done everything she could, only to watch her son fall. I whispered into the emptiness, into Matthew's memory. I didn't want this. I wanted him to change. But maybe this was the only way. The world outside moved on. Investors regrouped. The company steadied. But time slowed for me. I kept seeing Noah's last look, half rage, half despair. Matthew's words haunted me too. Justice had spoken, not through my hand, but through Noah's own mistakes. His punishment was never mine to give. It belonged to the law, and to life itself. The courtroom in Dallas was cold that morning, stripped of warmth or illusion. Flags hung stiff. The judge's gavel sat heavy, waiting. I sat in the back, quiet, hands folded in my lap. This was no longer my battle. Justice had its stage now. Noah stood before the judge, no longer wrapped in the armor of tailored suits. He looked smaller, his eyes restless, skin pale. The judge's words cut sharp. Mr. Dawson, this court has reviewed the evidence. Your actions amount to forgery, misrepresentation, and fraud. The damage to investors and to this estate cannot be overlooked. His attorney tried to plead pressure, youth, poor judgment, but it was useless. The truth stood naked. The verdict struck like thunder. Heavy fines in the millions, restitution owed. His reputation blackened forever. He was barred from holding executive power in any corporation. And then the blow that shattered even the whispers in the room. You will no longer be recognized as a lawful trustee of the Dawson estate. The trust remains under the guardianship of its rightful executor. Noah staggered as though struck. His mouth opened, but nothing came. Amy sat 2 rows in front of me. She'd worn her polished mask all trial, but cracks had formed. When the sentence fell, she didn't reach for him. She stood, heels echoing cold across the tile, and walked out without a word. The door slammed shut behind her louder than the gavel itself. Amy, wait! Noah cried, but she never turned. The room emptied. Reporters scribbled, investors muttered. Strangers avoided Noah's eyes as if disgrace might cling to them. I stayed seated until only he remained. He slumped on the bench, his tie loose, his hands trembling. Mother, he whispered, voice raw. They've ruined me. I met his eyes, unflinching. No, Noah. You ruined yourself. They just held up the mirror. He shook his head, breath shallow. Amy's gone. The company's gone. My name, everything. What am I supposed to do now? I didn't answer. Some truths can't be softened. The weeks that followed were merciless. The press fed on him. Headlines painted him the prodigal son turned fraud. Photographs showed him bent under flashing cameras. His old title, heir apparent, was stripped, replaced with disgraced, criminal, fallen. Investors he once charmed spat his name with contempt. Invitations dried up. Even acquaintances crossed the street to avoid him. Amy filed for separation. She reclaimed her maiden name, sold off his gifts, and moved to New York. She never spoke his name again. Noah's punishment wasn't just financial. It was exile. Months later I saw him again. At a coffee shop on the edge of town. He sat alone at a corner table, hunched over a laptop, clothes plain, face gaunt. Nothing like the man who once swaggered into boardrooms. He froze when he saw me. Shame flooded his face. Mother, he whispered. I didn't think you'd ever want to see me again. I didn't come here for you, I said truthfully. Then I sat across from him. But since I am here, I'll say this. You're still breathing. That means you still have choices. I've lost everything. I'm nothing now. I leaned in, firm but not cruel. You were nothing when you thought everything belonged to you. Stripped of it all, maybe now you can become something real. His eyes watered. I don't even know where to start. Where everyone else starts. At the bottom. You always wanted to build, so build. Not with stolen names or borrowed power. With your own hands. Brick by brick if you've got the strength. He didn't promise. He didn't beg. He just gave a faint nod. In time I heard whispers of his new life. A small apartment. The last of his luxuries sold. Work at a logistics firm, carrying boxes, filing papers, making deliveries. Menial but honest. For the first time the work was real. He kept to himself. No parties, no pretense. Some evenings he sat outside scribbling in a notebook, sketching out a future no one could hand to him. I didn't watch with bitterness. I carried my own ache. But I also carried truth. Punishment had stripped away illusions. Now the real sentence was his to serve, life itself, without the net he once believed untouchable. 3 years passed. Dallas forgot him, but I didn't. I sometimes drove by a modest office on the city's edge, its sign hand-painted, Dawson Logistics Services. The letters chipped but still there. Inside I saw him one day, sleeves rolled, tie cheap, hands rough from long hours. He wasn't barking orders. He was scribbling numbers in a ledger. When he noticed me, his old pride flickered, then fell. Mother, he said quietly. I nodded. You're working. Yes, he answered. Then added, it's not much. Deliveries, invoices, but it's mine. And I'm learning. His tone wasn't defensive. It was grounded. I didn't praise him. He didn't need applause. He needed to keep working. His son Ethan filled the house with life again. 14 now, tall, full of ambition. One afternoon, he ran into my garden with a notebook full of sketches. "Grandma," he grinned, "one day I'll build a company, bigger than Dad ever dreamed. But not the wrong way. I'll build something that makes you proud." I laid my hand on his. "Do it with honesty, Ethan. That's the only way it lasts." He nodded fiercely. Sometimes I wondered if Noah had heard his boy talk like that. Maybe it hurt. Maybe it healed. Noah's mistakes would never vanish. Society remembered. Doors stayed shut. Headlines still called him disgraced. But slowly he carved out a corner of respect. Not wealth, not fame, just the kind that comes from showing up every day. Even Ethan noticed. "Dad doesn't talk much, Grandma," he told me once. "But he listens now. He even packed me lunch last week." Those words cut me deeper than any verdict. Matthew's letter hadn't been wasted. One evening Noah came to my door, standing like a guest, not a son. His hair was streaked with gray, his voice low. "I can't undo what I did. I know that. But I'm trying not to waste what's left." I met his gaze. "That's between you and your conscience, Noah. Not me." He nodded. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just carried the weight. And that was its own kind of growth. Matthew always knew punishment doesn't end in court. It lives in every choice afterward. And Noah finally was learning. Ethan was the bridge, the boy who saw both worlds. From him came hope that the cycle might break. One twilight evening in my garden, Ethan's words echoed. "I'll make you proud, Grandma. You'll see." The stars pressed against the darkening sky. I closed my eyes and whispered to Matthew. I gave him a chance. He stands on his own now. He works. He bleeds for it. That was your wish. And maybe, just maybe, the cycle ends with Ethan. The night was quiet. Not lonely. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to hope.